Okay, so hello and welcome to the Celebrant Sisters YouTube channel. We are delighted to be back again today in the first of one of our guest speaker series. And we are delighted to have Charlotte with us today. Charlotte Ridley, who is based in Malmesbury. Charlotte is an experienced funeral director and trainer, and she runs Brooks's Independent Funeral Directors. So welcome, Charlotte.
Hello.
Hi,
Oh,
Charlotte. Thanks for
lovely to
joining
have
us.
you. Lovely to have
Thank
you.
you for having me.
Oh, bless you. And sorry, Laura, we forgot to do our raise and
Oh,
mugs with
yeah.
our little Celebrant
Do a
Sisters.
little
There
cheers.
we go.
It's still
Perfect.
pink, Miranda. You're fine.
We love the pink. We love the pink. So I'll kick start, Charlotte. Just maybe if you could just tell us just a little bit about yourself, and what inspired you to become a funeral director.
So I've been a funeral director 12 and a half years now. So I didn't always want to be a funeral director, wasn't on my radar. I actually wanted to be in the police when I was younger. That was always my sort of dream. And then when I was 16, I was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis, and I was very poorly with it. And it wasn't looking like I could head into the police, with all the activity and exercise that you needed to be doing and the amount of mobility you needed. So I actually went and studied forensic science after I finished my GCSEs, thinking, oh, I'll get into, scene of crime, that kind of route. So still investigation and that kind of thing. And one of our last modules was what happens after death, and that kind of thing. And a lot of the other students went on work experience to funeral directors, and that's when my interest first peaked. So I actually decided not to go to uni and pursue the forensic science. And I just decided I want to be an embalmer. And that's what I want to do. And I told my parents, I'm going to go and become an embalmer.
Wow.
And I went to every funeral home in the area, went everywhere I could. I went and learned as much information as I could. I did the certificate in funeral awareness with the NAFD. And eventually I did get a role as a funeral arranger. And I became friends with the embalmer that worked at that funeral home, and I followed him around and I shadowed him and I sort of learnt the trade. But actually, I fell in love with the arranging and directing side of things and looking after the families. And I
Yeah.
haven't looked back since. So that was back when I was 18, 19. So it's all I've known, it's all I've done. And I just knew that I wanted to help people. And obviously couldn't do that via the police route, but fell in love with looking after people and taking care of their funerals.
Wow.
Wow. Incredible, incredible. And such a young age as well, Charlotte, to be sort of so sure about, a role with, I suppose there's some, people talk about misconceptions or preconceptions, of the industry, but I think someone like you as a bit of a trailblazer, as a female funeral director is really interesting as well.
Yeah, I like breaking down the barriers. When I
Yeah.
first started, there really wasn't very many female funeral directors or any really females in the industry. So where I worked, there was one other lady when I started there, and then she left, and it was just me and lots of men. It was a
Yeah.
very male-dominated industry, and I did face sexism. And I know I have spoken to other females in the industry. I've got a lovely friend who's an embalmer and funeral director. She was lucky enough she started in the industry when she was 14, and she has not experienced a single drop of sexism. So she's very
Good.
lucky. Whereas I, on the other hand, did get the comments of what sexism and ageism as well. You're very young. Why are you doing this? Not just from people in the industry, but also clients
Okay.
as
Yeah.
well. So I did have to prove myself a little bit.
Mm.
But here we
There
Yeah.
is
are.
that
Yeah.
stereotype though, isn't there, that I think, like you say, like when you think of a funeral director before perhaps you know much about them, you might think of an older white male, unfortunately, and that just tends to be what it's like. And actually we know, working in the industry, that's not how it is. And actually there's a lot more, diversity within the industry. And I think good for you. And also so young. How was that conversation with your parents when you first said you want to be an embalmer? Were they shocked, or was it something they expected, or how did that
No,
go?
I don't think anything shocks them.
Really? Yeah,
Just
yeah.
like, okay, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah,
They did say to me, "Are you sure you don't want to defer your place at university?
yeah.
Just in case." But once I've made my mind up about something, I tend to run
I
headfirst
love
into it.
that. Yeah.
So they just supported me and helped me out. And they're still helping me out to this day as well. So they come and help at the funeral home
Wow.
and keep it family orientated, which is what I've always wanted to do as well. So yeah, they're definitely big supporters and very helpful.
I think that's really important in this industry, though. I don't know about you girls, but I always think having that family support when we are in an industry that can be difficult at times, there are parts of the role that can be really challenging. I think having that family support is so important at all parts of the industry, really.
Definitely, because some days are heavier than others, aren't they? For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's actually funny that you said, how did they react? Because it was when I first met my husband, it was him that was a little bit like, oh, that's odd. I mean, we were young, we were sort of 21, 22. And it was actually, he was kind of like, that's a bit of a strange job to do. And he just used to tell people I was in bereavement care because he was
Oh,
thinking, oh, people are
really?
going to think she's a
Really?
bit odd.
Gosh.
But now he's in awe of it also.
Yeah.
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 And I think it is that understanding, isn't it? As that understanding grows, I think even with us, like our own families and things like that, it's like actually when you talk to people about the industry, the thing that really strikes me is how much care goes into it. I've never met anyone in the funeral industry without the highest level of compassion. There is so much compassion within this industry, and I think people do it because they do care and they want to look after people.
Definitely, definitely. And I think just leading on from that point, Laura, I think we're all sort of in the process of building our funeral celebrant businesses. This is my third full year now. And I was all weddings beforehand. I think because I was always a little bit fearful and a little bit reticent because of that so said image
Yeah.
of maybe that sort of not breaking down the barriers, which I think is happening more and more now. And I think we've all been surprised, enlightened, just about how amazing the industry is. And I think often as celebrants, we get asked the question, "Do you love weddings or do you love funerals more?" And I would have always said weddings, and now it's like, oh, I kind of really love them both, but could
Yeah.
be in the other way. So I think it's a surprisingly beautiful industry is where I was going with that. So
And I think what's interesting, just on that point, Tara, I think what we found when we all met you at the National Funeral Exhibition a few weeks ago, Charlotte, was how wrong we were about the industry, because
yeah,
the level of innovation, but also the diversity of people in the industry is no one knows about this. It's like a hidden secret. It was really, really eye-opening as a result.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Absolutely. And Charlotte, what do you think? So obviously for us as celebrants, we can understand how important it is that a funeral really captures that person's story and really tells that story. But for families listening, what would you say is something that makes that story, that funeral, sorry, really memorable? Like how can they make sure that that funeral really represents their loved one and gives people, those lasting memories from the day?
yeah. Sticking to what their loved one, the reflection of them was, doing a service to reflect them. A lot of people worry about other mourners in the congregation, and but they were religious, so we need to have somebody religious for that person. Well, no, if the person who's passed away wasn't, and that's not what they would want, you don't need to do that just to please other people.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like, there is this image of funerals, the old traditional Victorian, you have to go to a church and you have to then be buried, or you have to go to the crematorium. You don't have to do that. It needs to be reflective and personal of the person that's passed away, not that rigid traditional image that we've all got in our minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think are some of the misconceptions that, I mean, we've touched on a few, but what do you think are some of the misconceptions that you're seeing at the moment about funerals, about ceremonies as well? You've touched on the fact that you don't have to be in a traditional venue, but how can you help support that as a funeral director as well?
Yeah. So just thinking outside the box, there's venues around here. In fact, I'm going next week to a venue. It used to be a private school and now it's a wedding venue. It's absolutely stunning. It's on a big estate with the gardens are beautiful, and they're having their service there. And you don't have to stick to the norm. You don't have to stick to going to the crematorium chapel or the local church. You can go to like the wedding venues of the barns that they have there's loads of them locally. You can go there. You can actually have it in somebody's garden. I've done so many ceremonies before. And I think where the direct cremation is creeping in, obviously with the cost of living as well, and people seeing the adverts on the television, I think there is a place for direct cremations. Absolutely. I don't dispute that. But I do also think there is another way around it. You can still have a service to honour their life and keep the costs down as well. It doesn't have to be all this, fancy everything hoo-ha. You can just do it respectfully and keep the costs down. Whereas I think the television and the adverts and these direct cremation adverts are just, you have the direct cremation and that is it. You can't have anything else. You can go to your local funeral directors. A lot of them have chapels in house, or even if they have a small chapel of rest, you can have a little blessing in there. There's so many different ways around it. It doesn't have to be just what we see on the television, what we've read about, what we see in films, what there is in the past. And that's what I think the future of funerals is really honouring and celebrating people's lives, as opposed to being this macabre event.
What I hear you saying in that is freedom of choice. And I think people assume, and I did too when I was planning my mum's funeral years ago, I assumed I would go to a funeral director and there would be only one choice. There would be very little decision making that I'd have to make. So what's the process that you take a family through when they contact you? Because I think it's worth demystifying that.
Yeah, so they give us a call. And it's usually myself that they will get through to with me, or one of my colleagues. We all work very closely together. Or one of my family members. So you'll always get through to somebody that knows exactly what's going on with the business. If their loved one's passed away at home, we ask them if they would like to spend some more time with their loved one, or if they're happy for us to go out. Obviously, once the death's been verified, then we explain all of the processes. But I don't like to overwhelm families. They've just lost somebody. You don't want to be giving them all of that information straight away. So we asked them, would they like us to give them a call back, to give them a couple of days? Would we put the power into them? Would they like to give us a call when they're ready? And we either go to see them where they're comfortable in their own home. They don't have to come into the funeral home. We can go there. We can go at a time that suits them. So if they're working or they've got other family members that want to travel down. And then we just start by asking them questions and getting to know their loved one, as opposed to going straight in with, what would you like? Blah, blah, blah. I get to know them. I get to know their loved one, because then as we go through the arrangement process, I can make suggestions. I can make recommendations. Well, you said your loved one really likes Manchester United. What about flowers in red and white? What about we do it on the order of service? You can really personalize those kinds of things if you get to know the person, and you get to hear their story, which I think is so important as well. But we have brochures that they can have a look at, pictures of things so they can actually see it. We have samples so that they can, actually use all their senses, so they can actually feel and see them as well. But yeah, just offering them that choice really, and making them comfortable. So if they want to be in their own home, or if they want to meet in a cafe, or if they do want to come in the funeral home, whatever they're comfortable with really.
Yeah. I think you hit a nail on the head there, Charlotte. This is something that I think we do a lot as celebrants. Is sometimes you just got to take the steer from the family or the couple. You've just got to read the room a little bit, and and as you say, they could be in shock. It's there's. I remember when my own dad passed. I just felt like I was in a fog for weeks, and it was just kind of getting through it. So you just need someone to gently steer you, and I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I always say to families, I give them my number, and we're on 20, we have the phones 24/7. If they want to give me a call in an evening or a weekend, I would rather them just give me a call and I can answer their question sort of straight away if I can, as opposed to them spending the whole of Saturday and Sunday worrying and overthinking, being in that fog and thinking, what do I do? Just give us a call anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the nice thing as well. Like I always find that in this industry, if there's a request from the family, no matter how bizarre it may seem, we will all do our best to accommodate and make it happen. Like even down to the people who provide the, media for the service. Like I've never known a song that they can't get hold of. Like if it's something that's completely bizarre, it might be something from a record that was played once 50 years ago, they will find it. And I think that's the nice thing. Like when, I go out and have meetings with families, they ask things that they think might not have been asked before. Actually, we can make them happen. And I think that's exactly what you said, Charlotte, kind of being, just led by your family and what feels right for them to make it personal to them. Obviously, without, breaking any confidentiality, is there a moment over your 12 years that's really stood out to you, like a moment in one of the services or one of the families that you supported, something that really stays with you as kind of a highlight?
It's not the things that stay, like the actual things that happen that stays with me. It's the people,
Yeah,
particularly people that stay with me. And some I'm still friends with now. You've become so close to them. You go on such a deep journey with them that they become friends. And I still see them now. So that's really lovely. So I wouldn't say any particular, there's so many things that's happened as well. And like you say, when people think they're asking a bizarre question, nothing's really bizarre to me. I don't think anything, there's no weird question or anything like that. So if I said something, other people may find it bizarre, but I just don't. So there's not really one point that I could pinpoint. There's services that have had more of an impact on me. Emotional impact, definitely. But I would say it's the people that are memorable.
That's lovely. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads on, Charlotte, just to the question about, like us, no 2 days are ever the same. You never know who's going to walk into your life when that phone rings. But could you maybe just give us a glance into a typical day for you? Obviously, arranging film, but what else would be a typical day for you?
It's okay. Typical day. So I obviously look after everybody in the mortuary as well. So we'll do what they're called daily checks. So I always go in and I say hello to everyone, good morning. But then we do what we call our daily checks, where we check how they are, what they're looking like, if we need to add any moisturizer or any things like that. If somebody needs dressing and their facial features setting, I do all of that as well. So any mortuary technician work. So that can be every day. We will check on the guests that are staying with us, the loved ones. But if they need dressing, obviously that could be an element of the day. Checking graves. If I've got a burial, I'll always go out first and check the grave, check that it's the right depth, it's the right size, it's in the right place. The churches, I'll go and check venues. I'll do recce's from houses. Roadworks pop up everywhere, so I like to stay on top of that. And timings. Meet with families. Families that I've done funerals for before, if they're just passing on the high street and want to pop in for a cuppa. That happens a lot as well. It's very community orientated, and I love that. We've got, open door policy. If we're not with a family, or if somebody else here, we're always open for a chat. So that's really important. I mean, this morning, I've been and checked out a venue that I've not been to before, so that was lovely. Conducting funerals after we've arranged it, we then have to obviously align everything, celebrants, wake venues. So it's definitely no 2 days are the same, and sometimes there's just not enough hours in the day. I think I say that a lot.
Yeah, I think we feel like that, especially at the moment in the middle of weddings as well. So amazing.
And if the family had somebody that was kind of in your care, Charlotte, are there any things that they should be thinking about? So obviously you mentioned dressing. I remember last year when my auntie passed, me and my dad were spending ages deciding on, what outfit to give her as her final outfit and looking through everything, and even down to things like underwear and stuff like that. Like, what kind of things should families be considering when they're, when you have one of their loved ones in your care?
Yeah, I think I always say whatever their loved one was comfortable in, place them in that, like dress them in that, bring those clothes into us. And I always mention, don't forget underwear, because everybody forgets underwear. Unless they didn't wear it, that's fine too.
My kind of girl.
But always remember underwear. I always give people a heads up on that. And I actually had somebody come in the other day and she said, I've put socks in the bag, is that okay? And I was like, everybody normally forgets, so that's perfect. And if they do forget, we do have stock here, and we'll ask, there isn't any underwear, would you like us to place them on? And we have obviously new underwear, stocking socks, things like that, tights, if they do want them and they've forgotten them and can't get them to us. So there is always that option as well.
Are there other things that people can put in their loved one's coffin, or things that they can't put in as well? Because I often get asked that question.
Great
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
Miranda.
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously letters, photos, teddies, things like that they can place in. The only thing they can pretty much for burial place anything. It's just for cremation that there's a lot of restrictions. See anything with a battery, they shouldn't really be placing in there. Yeah, no, not really. That we do obviously glasses. Sometimes we get those miniature alcohol bottles in the glass bottles. We shouldn't really put them in. So if you can get the ones that are in the plastic bottle, that's a lot better, a lot safer. But as long as there's no battery, that's fine. So we also have to remove pacemakers as well. So if somebody comes in with a pacemaker and they are going for a cremation, it is ourselves that have all the embalmer that do remove those pacemakers.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice and personal. I worked with a family last year, and the person who passed was a big McDonald's fan. So they put a Big Mac meal in,
Oh,
with the basket before we went to this world.
brilliant.
Oh, brilliant.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. So, I thought it was
that.
really nice. It's just things we wouldn't necessarily think about, would we? So yeah, amazing.
Even
Amazing.
pets' ashes. I've had pets' ashes in a coffin before as well.
Oh, that's nice.
Lovely. I
Yeah.
had someone earlier this year, they wanted a bottle of their favourite rum in the coffin, and they couldn't do it in they refused to do it in a plastic bottle. And this is where funeral directors and celebrants work so well together. So I had a discussion with the funeral director, and I said, what about if we all do a shot of rum around the coffin before the service ends? And we did, and ended up dancing around the coffin. And
Oh,
several people came up to both of us afterwards and said that was the best ending to a funeral ever, and so him. So
yeah.
that run was shared with everyone, not just going with him. And I think that's, we can always look at those creative touches of both what goes in and what's out, but still personal, which is lovely.
Yeah.
Really lovely.
Amazing.
Charlotte,
Amazing.
what would you say, because we've touched on a few things that are probably a little bit different, but also over your career, how do you think funerals have changed and evolved?
They are becoming more personal, and they, as I say, how I want them to go. They are becoming more celebrations of lives as opposed to somber events. I would say, and people are branching out. They're not just going to churches and crematoriums. They are looking at other venues. Definitely a lot more eco-friendly products as well. Didn't have too many of them. They are like your willow coffins, they're becoming more popular, even down to embalming products becoming more green. You probably saw it at the funeral exhibition as well, the mushroom coffin.
Oh, yeah, we saw those.
Yeah.
Really innovative items and products and services that are coming on into the profession. There's so many.
And I think I said correctly, Charlotte, you attended, is it sort of training on sort of water cremation or something like that similar recently? So are there any sort of advances on that coming to England at any stage?
It's not legalized in England at the moment. It's legalized in Scotland.
That's right. Yeah.
So we are a little bit behind, and various other countries it's also legalized. But fingers crossed, because it's not for everybody, but once you understand the process, it makes sense, and it is a greener option, but also it just we've had those two choices for such a long time now. It gives families that third choice, or it gives people that third choice. And I think that's really important to me, having choice.
Definitely. No, that's fascinating. Yeah, because I know it's kind of on the radar, but I think a bit like the Marriage Act in England, we're just behind for a really long time. So fingers crossed.
Could you tell us
Oh,
sorry, I was just going to say, Charlotte, could you tell us for families that are listening to this who maybe haven't heard of it before, could you just give us a bit more of an overview of what it is and what happens afterwards? Obviously, we know with the cremation, you then get ashes. We know with the burial, you have a burial plot and, either a tree or a headstone. What happens with the water cremations?
So you're in a chamber very similar to what a cremator looks like. You can't go in a coffin. So what they allow is a wool shroud, or you just go in nothing. So you go in, it's alkaline hydrolysis. So they use an alkaline solution with the water to break the body down. And then what comes out of the chamber are these really white, they become very fragile, but bones. It's also really good because any implants in the body, they come out as good as new. They come out perfect, basically. They're not, you know, in a fire cremation, they get damaged. Here they don't, so they can go and be resurfaced and reused, whereas that's another green element to it. They're then put into an oven to dry, and then they're put into a cremulator, the same as if you were at a cremation,
Okay.
and you receive back a powder. So when I went for the training, it was really interesting because the lovely lady there, she said, in America, you know, they view death and funerals very, very differently to us. But at the exhibition that they have there, they were shown ashes and powder, and people were actually choosing the hydrolysis because the finished end product looked nicer.
Oh wow, my gosh,
So
that
that
doesn't
was
surprise
really
me though. That
interesting.
yeah, that doesn't surprise me because I think that can be something that families are a bit concerned about, aren't they, afterwards? Whereas I think actually having that choice, like you say, is important to people to be able to think and what they might want to do in the future. You know, people do all sorts, don't they, with jewelry and stuff like that. So it's nice knowing that they've kind of got different options when it comes to that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, you know, horrible things like boiling a bag, or, you know, grandma's going back into the water system. There are a lot of things like that online. But once I sort of learned, I won't go into it because I'll probably get something wrong. But if there is a website, I can send it to you guys if you wanted to link it. Kindly Earth is the place that we went to that you know, bringing it, marketing it in the profession. And I can pop send the link to you.
That'd be great.
Where's going with this now? But yeah, they explained it all to us and how the water is cleaned and it's restored back to a neutral pH, and then put back into the system. So actually, the water is very, very clean before it goes back into our systems. It's not that we're drinking grandma or there's anything in the system afterwards. Which I think is important to note, because there is a lot of like people going, oh no, I don't fancy that, and a lot of horrible terms like boiling a bag on YouTube and on Google that you can find. So
okay, that's interesting.
On a slightly different tact, so because this is something I'm very aware of as a celebrant, you know, we support families through the initial stages of planning and then taking their service. And then what support is there available for families after? Because I think the real grieving begins after the service. So how as funeral directors can you or do you support families with kind of those initial weeks and months afterwards?
yeah, I completely agree. It's sort of once the funerals happened, people tend to disappear, that everybody's there before the funeral, but it's sort of afterwards. So we always do a check-in call around, some funeral directors will do it the next day. I tend to do it around a week later, once everything's sort of settled, and just check in and see how they're doing. We always make it known, you know, that we're here for them, not just for the funeral, afterwards as well. I know some funeral directors do offer, they have bereavement counsellors within their funeral homes. So that's another option. But we signpost. As we can do, we signpost, but we're very lucky that we live in a small community that we can still keep an eye on many people. We'll see them in the supermarket, we'll see them down the town, and we're able to, you know, just check in on them that way and let them know that we're there for them. But if they need any bit more professional help, we are able to signpost them to particular charities.
Right. Yeah, and I know you've got some exciting plans, haven't you, Charlotte, just for sort of Malmesbury and the local community, just to sort of support people and things that we're going to do just to kind of, you know, innovate the industry and sort of break down those stigmas as well. So yeah,
make it less taboo and less scary. People do. So many people come into the funeral home and they're like, oh, it's not actually as scary as I thought. You're not that scary, and I'm not a scary person. Really not. And it's not, you know, anybody is welcome. We're very honest and transparent. We don't hide anything here. So and families, you know, if they wanted to come and dress and get involved with that, more than happy for them to do that as well. So
amazing. And obviously this is a role, Charlotte, you chose at a very early age, but I think again, as celebrants and funeral celebrants, we're mindful of some days are heavier than others. But has this role changed how you view life, how you view your relationships, or making the most of the time that you have? Or are you able to kind of maybe sort of compartmentalize it a little bit, or is it just kind of really open things up for you?
So around September last year, became a funeral trainer. So I did step away from the everyday frontline of funerals, and I helped funeral directors and funeral operatives and mortuary technicians and arrangers go through their apprenticeship, and become qualified. And it was only in that during that time that I really reflected on what had just happened the last 11 years, everything that I'd experienced and how it impacted me. And it was only then did I sort of take a step back and go, oh, wow, actually, maybe this has had an effect on me. And I did take some time to process everything that I'd seen, the families I'd looked after, the stories that I'd heard.
Yeah.
But no, you just want to look after the families, always looking after families, and that is the most important. So you put your funeral director head on and you put your feelings to one side. They're
Yeah.
the families and the loved ones that they've lost are the most important people.
Definitely.
And we just want to look after them. So we kind
Yeah.
of put our feelings aside. But there are arrangements where, they hit you harder. And on the way home, I will give my husband or my mum a ring. And they're like, what are you calling in the middle of the day for, kind of thing? Aren't you at work? And it's just wanted to hear your voice. Just wanted to
Yeah.
hear your voice, or you'll go home and you'll hug them a little bit longer or a little bit,
Yes. Yes.
I
I
would
think the
say
role
that,
is clearly in your DNA, Charlotte, but I think that those moments of self-reflection and just, talking about things or a harder day are really important as well. And I think that's where the celebrant community is amazing, is that, we do really support each other. And, I know Laura led a tough ceremony yesterday and I was like, must call Laura, check in, make sure
Yeah.
she's okay. It's important. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think you said something to me, Tara, which I don't know if this was Charlotte you were talking to, and you said that you were talking to your funeral director and you both said to each other, but we are humans at the end of the day. So some of them are going to upset us more. And, me and the funeral director yesterday both shed a tear and gave each other a cuddle before the family came out. And I think that's just what we're all here for, aren't we? But I think as well, it has, if anything, has had a positive effect on my day-to-day life because I've realised how precious it is and how life is for living and not for, sweating the small stuff. And also you get perspective on what do people talk about at your funeral. They don't talk about what car you drive, how much money you have, how much you weigh, what size clothes you wear. None of that's important. It's actually about you and your personality. And I think that's definitely something that personally
Yeah.
I've learned. It's kind of made me live life a bit harder.
Yeah. It's good. If that's possible, Laura.
Yeah, exactly.
Love
Too.
it.
Something a lot of students, because we mentor as well, something students often ask me is, how do you cope with, when you've done a tough funeral, what do you do? And I always have self-care in place always after I leave a funeral, and that is to stop the car somewhere and go for a walk if the weather's good and just kind of decompress, and so that you can then move into what you need to do next, and just noticing when you need to kind of take that time out. I think for everyone in this industry, it doesn't matter what the role is, that's important.
Yeah, definitely, because we are human beings and it's natural for us. You do get emotionally involved. And actually, it's on the point that you made, Laura, that was actually a funeral director in Bristol, because I think previously to me starting this, I'd heard a couple of things on the grapevine about some funeral directors saying you're not allowed to cry, you can't show any emotion, you've got to deliver the ceremony and you've got to be completely stoic. But it was actually Stephen Bristol who said to me, it's all right if you cry, Tara, because we knew it was going to be a very, very tough day. And, I've seen him cry and, it's kind of, and I think
Yeah.
actually that's where the industry needs to continue to evolve, to be open, because at the end of the day, we are human beings and, it's you've got to share those emotions sometimes. So, yeah.
I had a family say to me last year, I supported a family through 3 funerals in the space of a handful of months. And I remember the daughter saying to me afterwards, I noticed you crying at the end and it shows you're human, and that really touched me. So, when we show our emotion in a way that is meaningful or personal to us, I think that endears and also helps people to realize that it's okay for them to be emotional too.
Mm.
Absolutely. So we're coming shortly to the end of our time, so I think we've got time for one more question. So Laura, do you want to maybe ask the question about one piece of advice? Do you want to do that
Yeah, I think
one? And then
definitely. I
we'll
think
wrap up?
that's a great one. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Charlotte, if you could give us one piece of advice that you would give people if they have got to, arrange a funeral for somebody that they love, what would that piece of advice be? What would you say is perhaps most important?
If you, my advice for everybody would be talk about it. If obviously somebody's passed away, it would be to not worry about what everybody else thinks. The other people in the congregation, the mourners. I've had it so many times where, like, as I said before, oh, we need to get a vicar because so and so is religious. No, do what you want with that
Mm,
person. Do what that person loved. Do it for a service that will reflect them. If you think that they would be more suited to a celebrant or a humanist or a vicar, choose what honors them. Is
mm.
probably my best advice, is to just go
Love
with
that.
that. And also, if they haven't spoken about, you don't have to go over the top. It's so easy to go, do you know what? My mum was the best person ever. She deserves everything. So you
Yeah.
go for the best of the best. You don't need to do that either. You really
Yeah.
don't. You just need to do what honors them.
Love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's beautiful. Great advice. Thank you,
Sometimes the
Charlotte.
simplest ceremonies are the most beautiful. I think sometimes people like sometimes at weddings, well, they pack it all in because they feel they have to, but just as you say, that expression of intent and what the person wanted and that so it truly reflects them is really important.
Mm.
So yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. Well, it's been an amazing session. Is there anything else you want to add, Miranda, Laura, or Charlotte before we wrap up?
But just to say, Charlotte, thank you so,
Yeah.
so much. This is
Yeah,
hugely helpful. And I'd love to kind of chat again because I'm sure there will be questions that families
Definitely.
have as a result of watching this. And the more that we can talk about and demystify what we all do in this industry, the better we
mm,
make it for people. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean,
Thank
I
you,
think
Charlotte.
thank you so much, Charlotte. And I think, we love this industry. And I think as things evolve, I think we'll definitely get you back again, Charlotte, at a later date, because I'm sure there'll be sort of questions and topics that will come out of this that we've talked about today. But thank you all so much for listening to the Celebrant Sisters and to Charlotte from Brooks's Independent Celebrants. Please post any comments on subjects that you would like us to talk about. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for having us. See you soon. Take
Thanks,
care.
guys.
Bye. Bye bye.